What if I told you that your soul has been leaving you breadcrumbs throughout your entire life, subtle signs pointing toward the completion of your earthly journey? What if the experiences you're having right now, the changes in your perspective, the shifts in what matters to you? What if these aren't random occurrences, but precise indicators that your soul is preparing for graduation from the school of physical existence? Edgar Cayce, the legendary sleeping prophet whose psychic revelations have guided millions, didn't just see into people's past lives and health issues. He glimpsed something far more profound: the spiritual signs that indicate when a soul is nearing the completion of its earthly curriculum. And here's what will take your breath away. These signs aren't about death in the way you might think. They're about spiritual completion. They're about a soul that has learned what it came here to learn, healed what it came here to heal, and given what it came here to give. Some souls recognize these signs and feel profound peace. Others miss them entirely and feel lost, wondering why everything seems to be changing, why their old priorities no longer feel important, why they're drawn to completely different experiences than what used to fulfill them. But here's the question that might change everything. Are you experiencing these signs right now? Have you been feeling shifts in your inner world that you can't quite explain? Changes in what brings you joy, what concerns you, what feels meaningful? Because if you are, you're not losing your way. You might be finding it. You might be approaching the most sacred transition your soul will ever make. Stay with me, because what Edgar Cayce revealed about these 9 signs will either give you profound peace about the changes you're experiencing, or awaken you to recognize patterns you never noticed before. If you're already feeling something stirring inside you as you hear this, drop a comment and let me know. Have you been sensing changes in yourself that you can't quite explain? And if you're ready to explore these deep mysteries with thousands of others on the same journey, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We're discovering truths that illuminate the deepest purposes of human existence. Now, let me take you on a journey through the 9 sacred signs that your soul may be preparing for its final earthly graduation. The Great Turning Inward. It all begins with what Edgar Cayce called the Great Turning, a profound shift in attention from the external world to the internal landscape of the soul. Have you noticed that you're becoming less interested in things that once captivated you? That career ambitions that used to drive you now feel somehow hollow. That social gatherings you once enjoyed now feel draining instead of energizing. This isn't depression. This isn't giving up on life. This is the first sign that your soul is completing its earthly education. Picture this. You've been attending a university for decades, completely absorbed in your studies, your social life, your future plans. But now you're approaching graduation, and suddenly the things that seemed so important throughout your academic career start to feel less relevant. You're not becoming lazy or disinterested. You're transitioning into a different phase of existence. Cayce observed that souls nearing completion begin to naturally withdraw their energy from external pursuits and redirect it inward. They become more interested in understanding themselves than impressing others, more drawn to meaning than achievement, more focused on being than doing. This turning inward manifests in countless ways. You might find yourself craving solitude more than ever before. Long walks alone feel more nourishing than busy social events. Quiet evenings at home bring more satisfaction than entertainment that once excited you. You might notice that you're becoming more selective about how you spend your time and energy. Activities that don't feed your soul start to feel like a waste of precious life force. People who create drama or negativity become harder to tolerate, not because you're becoming judgmental, but because your soul is too focused on its spiritual work to be distracted by superficial concerns. But here's what's really happening on a deeper level. Your soul is conducting what Cayce called the final inventory. It's reviewing everything it has learned, experienced, and accomplished in this lifetime, determining what still needs attention and what has been completed. This process requires tremendous inner focus. Your soul needs to turn away from the constant stimulation of external life to do this deep spiritual accounting. That's why the world suddenly feels less compelling. That's why you're drawn to silence, to nature, to activities that support inner reflection. Some people fight this turning inward, thinking something is wrong with them. They force themselves back into activities that no longer resonate, wondering why everything feels different. But Cayce taught that resisting this natural turning is like fighting the tide. It creates unnecessary struggle. If you're experiencing this great turning inward, you're not becoming antisocial or losing your zest for life. You're responding to a profound spiritual call to go deeper, to prepare for what comes next. And this leads us to the second sign, which often accompanies this inward turning and might completely change how you see your relationships with others. The bonds that transcend time. The second sign Cayce identified is what he called recognition across the veil, suddenly seeing the people in your life not just as they appear now, but as the eternal souls they truly are. Have you recently found yourself looking at your loved ones with a strange sense of knowing that goes beyond your current relationship? Like you're seeing them for who they really are beneath their human personality. This recognition manifests in beautiful and sometimes overwhelming ways. You might look at your aging parent and suddenly see them not as the flawed human who raised you, but as an ancient soul who chose to love you through the limited form of human parenthood. All the resentments, all the disappointments, all the unmet expectations suddenly seem so small compared to the profound love that exists between your souls. You might find yourself forgiving family members for things that have bothered you for decades. Not because you're forcing forgiveness, but because you can suddenly see the bigger picture of why these souls are in your life and what you've been learning from each other. Or you might experience moments of profound connection with your spouse, your children, your closest friends. Moments where you feel like you're seeing straight into their soul and recognizing someone you've known across lifetimes. Cayce taught that as souls approach completion, the veil between lifetimes begins to thin. You start to remember, on a soul level, the deeper connections you share with the important people in your life. You begin to understand that your relationships aren't random. They're sacred agreements between souls who have been supporting each other's growth across multiple incarnations. This recognition brings both profound love and profound sadness. Love, because you can finally see the eternal bond that connects you to your soul family. Sadness, because you're beginning to sense that your time together in physical form may be coming to an end. But here's what's truly remarkable about this sign. It often leads to healing conversations and connections that seemed impossible before. When you see someone as an eternal soul rather than just their current personality, you naturally approach them with more compassion, more patience, more unconditional love. You might find yourself having deeper conversations with people you've known for years, sharing feelings you've kept hidden, expressing appreciation you've taken for granted, making peace with estranged relatives, strengthening bonds with children or parents in ways you never imagined possible. If you're recognizing souls around you in this deeper way, if you're feeling sudden urges to connect more authentically with your loved ones, pay attention. Your soul might be trying to complete its relationships, to express the love and healing that needs to happen before your earthly journey ends. And this recognition of eternal bonds often triggers the third sign, a phenomenon that Cayce said was one of the most beautiful aspects of approaching spiritual completion. The unfinished symphony finds its notes. The third sign is what Edgar Cayce called the great healing, a sudden acceleration in resolving old wounds, completing unfinished emotional business, and releasing patterns that have been carried for years or even lifetimes. Have you been experiencing unexpected healing in areas of your life that seemed permanently stuck? Relationships that suddenly improve after years of conflict? emotional wounds that begin closing after decades of pain, addictions or destructive patterns that you finally find the strength to break. This isn't coincidence. This is your soul rushing to complete its earthly curriculum. Picture a student who realizes they're close to graduation but still has several incomplete assignments. They experience a burst of motivated energy to finish everything, to tie up loose ends, to complete what they started. Your soul experiences something similar as it approaches the end of its earthly education. Cayce observed that souls nearing completion often experience what he called accelerated karma, rapid opportunities to heal, forgive, and resolve issues that might have taken years to work through under normal circumstances. That family member you haven't spoken to in years might suddenly reach out, creating an opportunity for reconciliation. You might finally find the courage to have that difficult conversation you've been avoiding. Old resentments might spontaneously dissolve as you gain new perspective on past hurts. Or you might discover that you're naturally releasing attachments to things that once seemed so important. The need to be right in arguments fades away. The desire to control outcomes diminishes. Jealousy, anger, and other heavy emotions start to feel foreign to your nature. This healing often happens in waves. You might go through periods of intense emotional processing, feeling everything you've ever suppressed, grieving losses you never fully mourned, releasing anger you've carried for decades. Then you emerge feeling lighter, clearer, more at peace than you've ever felt before. Some people experience physical healing during this phase too. Chronic conditions that doctors couldn't explain suddenly improve. Energy levels increase despite aging. Sleep becomes more restful. The body seems to be preparing itself for transition by releasing stored trauma and tension. But the most profound healing often happens in your relationship with yourself. Self-forgiveness that seemed impossible becomes natural. Self-love that felt forced becomes authentic. You stop fighting yourself and start appreciating the journey you've been on, including all the mistakes and struggles that seemed so painful at the time. If this kind of accelerated healing is happening in your life, if you're finding resolution in areas that have been stuck for years, your soul might be preparing for completion. It's cleaning house, finishing business, making peace with the past so it can move forward unencumbered. And as this healing accelerates, something else beautiful begins to happen. The fourth sign that Cayce said was unmistakable in souls approaching their earthly graduation. If you're recognizing these patterns in your own life, I'd love to hear about it. Share in the comments one area where you've experienced unexpected healing or resolution recently. When you acknowledge these shifts, it helps our entire community recognize the sacred nature of what you might be experiencing. And if your reflection shows genuine spiritual awareness, I'll mark it with a heart to honor your courage in sharing. But this healing process sets the stage for something even more profound, a sign that often takes people by surprise and can be either deeply comforting or unsettling, depending on how well you understand what's happening. The visitors from beyond. The fourth sign Edgar Cayce identified is one that often startles people who aren't expecting it. Visitations from departed souls, an increase in contact with loved ones who have already passed away. Have you been having more vivid dreams about people who have died? Sensing the presence of departed family members or friends in ways that feel more real than imagination? Receiving what seem like messages or signs from those who have crossed over? This isn't your mind playing tricks on you. According to Cayce, as souls approach completion, the veil between the physical and spiritual worlds becomes thinner for them. They begin to vibrate at a frequency that makes communication with departed souls not only possible, but natural. These visitations serve multiple purposes. Sometimes departed loved ones come to offer comfort and guidance as you navigate the changes in your life. They might appear in dreams to reassure you that death isn't something to fear, showing you through their presence that consciousness continues beyond physical existence. Other times, these souls return to complete unfinished business with you. A parent who died before you could reconcile might visit to offer the forgiveness or understanding that wasn't possible while they were alive. A friend who passed suddenly might come to deliver a message they never had the chance to share. But perhaps most importantly, these visitations serve to familiarize you with the reality of the spiritual realm. Your soul is being gradually introduced to the dimension it will soon inhabit, making the transition feel less foreign and frightening. The visitations might be subtle at first. A sudden scent that reminds you powerfully of your grandmother. A song that comes on the radio at the exact moment you're thinking about your departed spouse. A dream so vivid and meaningful that you wake up feeling like you've actually spent time with someone you love. As you approach completion, these experiences often become more frequent and more undeniable. You might wake up with information you couldn't have known, comfort that seems to come from outside yourself, or a sense of guidance that feels distinctly like it's coming from someone who loves you deeply. Some people resist these visitations, thinking they're grief-induced hallucinations or wishful thinking. But Cayce taught that dismissing these experiences robs you of one of the most beautiful gifts of approaching spiritual completion: the opportunity to maintain conscious contact with your soul family across dimensions. If you're experiencing increased contact with departed loved ones, pay attention to what they're trying to communicate. They often bring messages about your purpose, reassurance about your path, or guidance about decisions you're facing. But these visitations also prepare you for the fifth sign, which Cayce said was one of the most profound shifts that souls experience as they approach their earthly graduation. The call of the eternal. The fifth sign is what Edgar Cayce called the pull of the higher realms, an increasing sense of homesickness for a place you've never been, at least not in this lifetime. Have you been feeling a strange longing that you can't quite identify? A sense that you don't quite belong in this world, despite having lived here your entire life. An increasing draw towards spiritual experiences, meditation, prayer, or contemplation of the divine. This isn't escapism or depression. This is your soul beginning to remember its true home. Cayce explained that as souls near completion, they start to vibrate at frequencies that are closer to the spiritual realms than the physical world. This creates a natural magnetic pull toward higher dimensions of existence. You begin to feel more at home in spiritual states of consciousness than in ordinary daily activities. You might find yourself spending more time in meditation, not because you're trying to achieve something, but because that state of consciousness feels more natural than waking activity. Prayer might become less about asking for things and more about communion with divine presence. Nature often becomes incredibly important during this phase. You might feel drawn to spend hours watching sunsets, sitting by water, or walking in forests. These aren't just pleasant activities. They're experiences that help your soul attune to the vibrational frequency of the spiritual realms. Some people experience what Cayce called preview experiences, moments of expanded consciousness where they glimpse the peace, love, and understanding that await in higher dimensions. These might come during meditation, prayer, or quiet contemplation. They're not hallucinations. They're your soul sampling its future home. But this pull toward the eternal can create challenges in daily life. You might find it harder to care about mundane responsibilities. Work that once felt important might seem trivial. Social obligations might feel like burdens rather than pleasures. This is why understanding this sign is so crucial. If you don't recognize what's happening, you might think something is wrong with you. You might force yourself back into activities that no longer resonate, creating internal conflict and confusion. But if you understand that this pull toward the eternal is a natural part of spiritual completion, you can honor it while still fulfilling your earthly responsibilities. You can see it as preparation for your soul's next adventure, rather than a rejection of your current life. The key is finding balance, allowing yourself to spend more time in spiritual states, while still maintaining your physical existence with love and responsibility. And this pull toward higher realms often triggers the sixth sign, which Cayce said was one of the most beautiful transformations he witnessed in souls approaching completion. The heart that knows no boundaries. The sixth sign Edgar Cayce identified is universal compassion, a profound expansion of your capacity to love that extends far beyond your personal circle to encompass all beings. Have you noticed that your heart has been opening in ways you never expected? That you feel deep compassion for people you don't even know? That suffering anywhere in the world touches you more deeply than it used to? This isn't becoming overly sensitive or emotionally unstable. This is your soul expressing its true nature as it prepares to return to realms of unconditional love. Cayce observed that as souls approach completion, the barriers that separate them from others begin to dissolve. You start to see yourself in everyone you meet. The homeless person on the street isn't a stranger. They're another aspect of consciousness having a difficult experience. The difficult co-worker isn't an enemy. They're a soul struggling with their own lessons and limitations. This expanding compassion often manifests in unexpected ways. You might find yourself donating to charities you never supported before, volunteering for causes that weren't previously on your radar, feeling moved to help people in ways that surprise even you. But it's not just about helping others. Your compassion extends to yourself as well. You might finally forgive yourself for past mistakes. Stop judging yourself so harshly. Treat yourself with the same kindness you've always tried to show others, and your compassion expands to include all of life: animals, plants, the earth itself. You might become more conscious of your environmental impact. Feel sadness about the suffering of animals. Experience a sense of connection to nature that goes beyond intellectual understanding to genuine felt experience. This universal compassion can be overwhelming at first. You might feel like you're caring too much, feeling too deeply, being affected by suffering that isn't directly related to your life. But Cayce taught that this is actually your soul remembering its true nature, beings of pure love who are naturally connected to all consciousness. The challenge is learning to feel this compassion without being overwhelmed by it, to care deeply while maintaining inner peace, to serve others while taking care of yourself, to love universally while still honoring your human limitations. As this compassion develops, you often find that your purpose in life becomes clearer. You understand that you're here not just for your own growth, but to serve the growth and healing of all consciousness. Your individual journey becomes part of a larger mission of love. If you're experiencing this expansion of compassion, trust it. Allow your heart to open even when it's painful. Let yourself care about things that matter, even if others don't understand why. Your soul is expressing its readiness to return to realms where love is the only reality, and this expanding love sets the stage for the seventh sign, which Cayce said was one of the most mysterious and beautiful experiences souls have as they approach their earthly graduation. The wisdom that comes from nowhere. The seventh sign is what Edgar Cayce called spontaneous knowing. Sudden access to wisdom, understanding, and knowledge that seems to come from beyond your personal experience or education. Have you been having insights about life, relationships, or spiritual matters that feel like they're coming from a source deeper than your conscious mind? Understanding concepts that you've never studied, knowing things about people or situations without being told. This isn't imagination or coincidence. This is your soul accessing the universal field of consciousness as it prepares to return to realms where all knowledge is available. Cayce explained that as souls approach completion, Their consciousness begins to expand beyond the boundaries of individual experience. They start to tap into what he called the Akashic records, the universal library of all knowledge and experience. This spontaneous knowing might manifest as sudden understanding of spiritual concepts that previously seemed confusing. You might find yourself explaining metaphysical principles with clarity and depth that surprises even you. Complex philosophical or spiritual questions might suddenly have obvious answers. Or you might develop intuitive abilities that you never had before. Knowing when someone is about to call. Sensing when something important is about to happen. Understanding people's motivations and emotions without them saying anything. Sometimes this knowing is practical. You might have sudden insights about health, relationships, or life decisions that prove to be remarkably accurate. Solutions to problems might appear in your mind without effort or struggle. But perhaps most importantly, you might develop what Cayce called soul sight, the ability to see the spiritual reality behind physical appearances. You understand people's behavior in the context of their soul's journey rather than just their personality patterns. You see current events in the framework of humanity's spiritual evolution rather than just political or social dynamics. This spontaneous knowing can be startling at first. You might question where these insights are coming from, whether you can trust them, what it means that you suddenly understand things you never studied. But Cayce taught that this is simply your soul remembering what it has always known. As the barriers between your individual consciousness and universal consciousness dissolve, you naturally have access to wisdom that belongs to all souls. The key is learning to distinguish between genuine spiritual insight and mental speculation. True spontaneous knowing comes with a quality of certainty and peace. It doesn't create anxiety or confusion. It brings clarity and understanding. If you're experiencing this kind of knowing, trust it. Start paying attention to the insights that come to you. Test them gently in your life. You might discover that your soul has access to guidance and wisdom that can transform not only your own experience, but your ability to help others as well. And this expanding awareness prepares you for the eighth sign, which Cayce said was often the most emotionally challenging for souls to navigate as they approach completion. The threads that begin to loosen. The eighth sign Edgar Cayce identified is natural detachment, a gradual, organic releasing of attachment to people, possessions, and outcomes that once seemed essential to your happiness. Have you noticed that things you used to care deeply about no longer seem as important? That you're less bothered by outcomes you can't control? That you feel more peaceful about the impermanence of life? This isn't becoming cold or uncaring. This is your soul naturally preparing for transition by releasing the attachments that bind it to physical existence. Cayce observed that souls approaching completion begin to hold everything in life more lightly. They love just as deeply, but with less possessiveness. They care about outcomes, but aren't devastated when things don't go as planned. They enjoy material possessions, but don't derive their identity or security from owning them. This detachment often confuses family members and friends who interpret it as withdrawal or depression. But it's actually the opposite. It's a sign of spiritual maturity and inner freedom. You might find yourself naturally simplifying your life. Getting rid of possessions that no longer serve you, letting go of relationships that are based on obligation rather than genuine connection. Releasing goals and ambitions that came from ego rather than soul purpose. But the most profound detachment often involves releasing the need to control how your life unfolds. You might discover a new level of trust in the process of existence. Instead of fighting against difficulties or grasping for specific outcomes, you find yourself flowing with whatever life brings. This doesn't mean becoming passive or irresponsible. You still take action, make decisions, and work toward goals. But you hold these activities more lightly. understanding that your soul's well-being doesn't depend on any particular external result. The detachment extends to relationships as well. You love your family and friends deeply, but you're less needy about their behavior or choices. You can offer support without trying to control their decisions. You can express love without expecting specific responses. Perhaps most importantly, you begin to detach from your own identity. The roles you've played, successful professional, devoted parent, respected community member, these start to feel like costumes you've worn rather than who you really are. You identify more with your eternal soul essence than with your temporary human personality. This natural detachment can be sad for both you and your loved ones. It might feel like you're pulling away from life just when they want to hold on more tightly. Understanding this as a spiritual sign rather than a personal rejection can help everyone navigate this transition with more grace. If you're experiencing this kind of detachment, honor it while still maintaining loving connections with others. You can be spiritually free while still being physically present and emotionally available. And this growing detachment prepares you for the ninth and final sign that Cayce said was the ultimate indicator that a soul was ready for its earthly graduation. The peace that surpasses understanding. The ninth and final sign Edgar Cayce identified is unshakeable inner peace, a deep, abiding tranquility that remains stable regardless of external circumstances. Have you been experiencing moments of profound peace that seem to come from somewhere deeper than your thoughts or emotions? A sense of rightness about your life, even if everything isn't perfect? A feeling that all is well in ways you can't fully explain? This isn't temporary relaxation or situational contentment. This is your soul resting in the knowledge that its earthly mission is nearly complete. Cayce described this peace as the signature of spiritual completion. It's a quality of consciousness that emerges when a soul has learned its major lessons, healed its primary wounds, fulfilled its essential purpose, and prepared for transition to higher realms. This peace often puzzles people who experience it, especially if their external circumstances would typically cause stress or worry. You might be facing health challenges, financial difficulties, or relationship problems. Yet underneath it all, there's an unshakable sense that everything is unfolding exactly as it should. The peace isn't dependent on having all your problems solved or all your questions answered. It comes from a deeper knowing that your soul's journey has meaning and purpose, that every experience has contributed to your growth, and that whatever comes next will be exactly what you need. You might find that small irritations that used to upset you no longer have the power to disturb your inner calm. Traffic jams, rude people, disappointing news. These things might still be unpleasant, but they don't shake your fundamental sense of peace. Even thoughts about death, if they arise, don't create the fear they once did. You might feel curious about what comes next rather than anxious about leaving this world. Death begins to feel less like an ending and more like a doorway to the next phase of your soul's adventure. This peace often radiates outward, affecting everyone around you. People might comment that you seem different, more calm, more centered. They might seek out your presence when they're troubled, sensing that you carry something they need. But perhaps most remarkably, this peace coexists with deep engagement in life. You're not detached in a way that makes you uninvolved or uncaring. Instead, you're able to participate fully in life while remaining centered in an inner calm that external events can't disturb. Cayce taught that this unshakable peace is the soul's way of signaling its readiness for whatever comes next. It has completed its earthly curriculum and feels prepared for graduation, whether that means continued service in physical form or transition to spiritual realms. If you're experiencing this kind of peace, especially in combination with the other signs we've discussed, your soul might be approaching a significant completion. This doesn't necessarily mean physical death is imminent. Some souls complete their earthly education but choose to remain in physical form to serve others or experience life from their new level of consciousness. But it does mean that something profound is shifting in your spiritual journey. You're approaching a graduation of sorts, a completion of one phase of your eternal existence, and a preparation for whatever magnificent adventure awaits next. Recognition changes everything. Now that you understand these 9 signs that Edgar Cayce identified as indicators of spiritual completion, everything changes about how you might interpret what's happening in your life. Those feelings of restlessness, those shifts in priorities, those experiences that seemed confusing or concerning, they might actually be signs of the most beautiful transition your soul can make. If you're recognizing several of these signs in your own experience, you're not losing your way. You're finding it. You're not becoming disconnected from life. You're connecting with the deeper purpose behind your earthly existence. But here's what's crucial to understand. Recognizing these signs isn't about predicting when your physical life will end. It's about understanding that your soul operates on a different timeline than your body. And sometimes souls complete their earthly education long before their physical form stops functioning. Some people experience all 9 signs and continue living physically for many more years, but with a completely transformed relationship to existence. They become elders in the truest sense. Souls who have completed their own learning and are now here primarily to serve others' growth and healing. Others experience these signs as preparation for transition to spiritual realms. Their soul has finished its earthly curriculum and is ready to graduate to higher dimensions of existence. The key isn't to know which category you fall into, but to honor whatever process is unfolding in your life. If your soul is approaching completion, the most important thing you can do is support that process rather than resist it. This might mean spending more time in spiritual practices that nourish your soul, having deeper conversations with loved ones, completing unfinished emotional business, simplifying your life to focus on what truly matters. It might mean trusting the changes you're experiencing rather than fighting them, allowing yourself to feel less interested in activities that no longer resonate, embracing the pull toward solitude, nature, and spiritual connection. Most importantly, it means recognizing that if your soul is approaching completion, you have accomplished something magnificent. You've learned lessons that many souls take multiple lifetimes to master. You've healed wounds that stretch back through generations. You've developed capacities for love, wisdom, and service that are rare and precious. If this message is resonating deeply with you, I want to hear about it. Share in the comments which of these 9 signs you're experiencing and how understanding them as spiritual indicators, rather than problems, changes your perspective. Your willingness to explore these possibilities helps everyone in our community recognize the sacred nature of their own life transitions. And if this exploration is opening new understanding for you, subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our continued journey into these profound spiritual mysteries. Share this video with someone who might be experiencing their own spiritual completion. Your sharing might provide exactly the understanding they need. The gift you came to give. As we reach the end of our exploration of these 9 signs, I want to leave you with the most important truth Edgar Cayce revealed about souls approaching earthly completion. You didn't come to this planet just to learn and grow for your own benefit. You came as a gift to the world. Every lesson you've learned, every challenge you've overcome, every moment of love you've expressed, all of this has contributed to the healing and evolution of human consciousness. If your soul is showing signs of completion, it means you've given your gift. You've added your unique contribution to the grand symphony of human experience. You've helped raise the vibrational frequency of this planet through your very presence here. The peace you might be feeling isn't just personal satisfaction, it's cosmic recognition. The universe itself is acknowledging that you've fulfilled your purpose, that you've served the greater good in ways that matter more than you can imagine. Whether your path leads to continued physical existence with expanded consciousness or transition to spiritual realms, you can rest in the knowledge that your life has had profound meaning and impact. The struggles you've endured weren't meaningless suffering. They were the forging fires that developed your soul's strength and compassion. The love you've given wasn't just personal kindness. It was healing energy that has touched countless lives in ways you'll never fully know. The wisdom you've gained isn't just intellectual understanding, it's spiritual treasure that becomes part of the collective human inheritance, available to help future souls navigate their own journeys. If you're experiencing the signs of approaching spiritual completion, honor what you've accomplished. Celebrate the magnificent journey your soul has taken. Trust the process that's unfolding, whether it leads to continued earthly service or graduation to higher realms. And if you're not yet experiencing these signs, let them inspire you to live more consciously, love more deeply, and serve more fully. Let them remind you that your current struggles and challenges are shaping you into the beautiful, wise, compassionate being you're meant to become. Your soul knows what it's doing. Trust its wisdom, honor its journey, and allow yourself to feel amazed by the perfect unfolding of a plan so magnificent that your human mind can barely glimpse its true scope and beauty. The signs are there for those ready to see them. The question is, are you ready to recognize the sacred nature of your own spiritual journey? The answer to that question might change not just how you see your future, but how you live every precious moment you have remaining in this extraordinary adventure of physical existence. Your soul's graduation is not an ending. It's the beginning of something even more magnificent than you can imagine.